So she's getting it set up now. Understand this.
Welcome, Mr. Alligood.
And to you as well. Exciting night tonight, first meeting.
Congratulations, you made it.
Thank you very much. Hope all this computer stuff works.
Sounds like it's doing fine.
Very good. I was worried about the sound.
Oh, goodness.
This is a new year.
Doesn't seem like it yet.
Yeah, the good times here yet?
I think so.
I think we're getting one last bird flip from 2020 leaving the station.
There you go.
And Mr. Alligood, you opined that this is your first meeting, but it's your first meeting as an elected official. The record reflects that you've attended many city council meetings, but thankful for you to be here and congratulations.
Thank you very much. And that is true. I momentarily forgot about all those other meetings I'd been to.
Very dedicated.
So tonight I get a vote.
Right.
See, we have several members of staff with us. Welcome, Ty and Chief Frost.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council.
It is the appointed hour of 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the work session to order. Our organizational meeting and discussion may be a brief meeting depending upon questions and circumstances relative to council committees and assignments. We still, for the most part, work as a committee of the whole, with the exception recently of unique committees such as the CARES Committee and the Recycling Committee, which have been appointed. And I don't plan to make any changes, and I'm grateful to Ms. Alexander for continuing on as Vice Mayor for the city. And if you have any questions, relatively speaking on the committee assignments, feel free to let me know. And Mr. Alligood, relative to Department of Social Services, I anticipate that Michelle's going to continue on, but you would fill her seat on the committees that she's assigned to from that additional detail.
Sure, be glad to.
Sure. Next item is the Council Code of Ethics, which we certainly received, and I will opine that, Janie, thank you for delivering the documents in their entirety, and specifically the signature page that we ask all city council members and members of various boards and commissions to acknowledge and sign as well. But I will call on the city manager for any additional details relative to the Code of Ethics.
Mr. Mayor, council members, there really are no other details. This policy is aligned with state code and state and city policy. So there may be minor changes that could be made to it, but it was passed in 2015, I believe. And again, could be updated if you desire, but there's no need to. So.
Any members of council have any suggestions, observations, or thoughts on the current document as it is presented?
Done for me.
Thank you, Mr. Alligood. Hearing no others, this is a living document, and if there are issues, especially in light of activities in the last 24 to 48 hours, if there are things we want to update or adjust or amend, we certainly have that flexibility to bring it forward anytime, and would invite city council members to do so. But if I could, and request all city council members to complete the signature page and return that to Janie no later than, we'll say, the 15th, when our financial disclosure is due as well. So if anybody has any problem with that, please alert me, or more importantly, Janie, but we want to get those current year signed documents in as soon as possible. Jared, did you have anything you wanted to observe, or all good?
All good generally, and we'll just say that I think it's a fantastic thing that the city has this, and is a good thing overall. And, I think it looks good. And obviously, if there are any specific questions, any specific sort of circumstances that come up that raise any issues, obviously going forward, anyone feel free to reach out and we can talk about it.
Thank you for that. As a reminder, if you do have a concern that there's a violation of the Code of Ethics, I hope that you'll take it up with the council member, mayor, or elected official, as it were, directly. If you don't get satisfaction or have concerns that there is a violation or concern of the Code of Ethics, you should contact the city manager and or the city attorney for further discussion. Next item is conflict of interest and financial disclosure forms. Again, I will, or certainly everyone, if you did not receive it, please let Janie know. But she delivered those dutifully the first day of the year. And the request is a little more detailed, as I think Councilman Ziegler has made mention in the past. So be sure to follow the instructions on the financial disclosure form in particular. Jim, I would ask if you have any other comments or.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to yield to the city attorney to take you briefly through this document because after 35 pages, I don't know that I'm capable of handling the ins and outs as well as he is.
Very good.
Well, I'll just say, there's no getting around this. This is a state requirement for city councilors. I'm sure you've all, other than Mr. Allagood, have done something like this in the past. So I assume all but Mr. Allagood are doing the updates. And so, but generally, I think the issues are pretty self-explanatory. They're obviously trying to have various elected officials and other people with the public trust sort of on the record as to what their potential sources of conflicts are, given their personal holdings. So obviously you have to fill it out, have to be complete and accurate. But at the same time, there are spots where there may be some discretion, depending on what the specific issue is. So again, as always, my advice is if there's any questions to contact me and we'll go through it. I don't think we need to sort of spend the time to go over it in detail, other than to say it's required. And I think Janie sent you or gave you the information with the deadlines and stuff. But if you have any questions over the next few weeks as you fill this out, specific, with the changes that have been enacted, anything that's a concern or even just generally a discussion about it, feel free to reach out and give me a call.
I would just make one correction to your comment. It's not in the weeks ahead, but the weeks ahead. I believe that the financial disclosures need to be delivered to Janie no later than January 15th, in compliance with state regulations.
Yes.
My other observation is that if you are unable to deliver your financial disclosure form by the 15th and are past the date, Janie does have the responsibility / obligation to assess penalties for not turning it in on time. Leslie, did you have a?
Just a
It's
a local deadline.
I got Leslie.
I just had a question on our audit. It was noted that some of the financial disclosures were incorrect, or that, I guess, are we supposed to X out pages that don't apply to us with some notation about that? I guess, will Janie look over and let us know if she sees something?
I think we're supposed to put NA.
Yeah, I've already started looking over the ones that I've gotten and putting NA in the spots that aren't filled out. So I'm coming in behind you guys to double check.
Thank you. We knew we could count on you.
Hey, Jay, did you get mine or does mine look okay?
I was not in the office today or yesterday, but I will be in tomorrow. So if you hand delivered it, it's probably on my desk.
Okay, sounds good.
Isn't it accurate that the 15th is a Lexington City deadline so that Janie has time to file it correctly by the actual due date, which is the end of the month?
Yes,
That is
that's
correct.
my deadline.
Right. So it's,
Anyone have any questions about conflict of interest or financial disclosure forms? The other piece I would add is from a reporting standpoint, I guess I would ask a question. Is anyone else getting a tremendous amount of noise in the background?
Yeah, there's a lot of chatter coming over the wire. I'm looking around. I see a couple windows that maybe aren't muted that might should be.
Okay. Thank you, Chuck. Yeah, it's hard to discern all the comments there. But Jared, is it fair to say that if you're receiving any gifts, there's a record that needs to be kept of that? And when in doubt, certainly it's best to over disclose.
Yeah, in terms of sort of the general conflicts of interest rules, it's far better to be overly sort of voluminous with any sort of disclosures and err on the side of caution. I will say that in my experience, the actual legalities, the legal sort of ramifications of the Conflict of Interest Act are occasionally very specific and limited to actual sort of transactions between the municipality and either members of council or their members of their household, which obviously is very specific. So I'm often counseling folks that the political conflicts, the appearance of a conflict is potentially more, has more practical ramifications than the actual legal issues covered by the Conflict of Interest Act. So I think everyone sort of generally errs on the side of, if there's even the perception of a possible conflict, I'm going to at least disclose and then consider recusing. And that's ultimately an individual decision of each member based on their sort of perception of the possible conflict. So point being, I think everyone is aware of sort of what is obviously a conflict, and I would hope would sort of report it and avoid it. But then beyond that, it's certainly up to the individual member to determine if they think there is sort of a larger issue that needs to be addressed in terms of the appearance of a conflict. So that comes up occasionally, so feel free to reach out. I'm happy to discuss sort of pretty specific factual circumstances in a lot of these cases, and a lot of detail to determine sort of what a proper role is. But yes, that is part of it, is the disclosure, and certainly the disclosure of gifts from anything that might potentially in any way be connected to your service either now or in the future, certainly needs to be disclosed and made public. And I know some folks just have a blanket policy of, thank you, we appreciate the thought, but I'm a public figure and I cannot accept any gifts. But obviously that's up to your own individual determination of where you want to come down on that.
Thank you, Jared. Also safe to say that with the number of people that are involved or their spouses are involved with the universities, there can certainly be circumstances where there is a perception of a conflict of interest, but the city council members can participate and vote depending upon the issue. And I think it's incumbent upon each individual, but also as colleagues, I think it's important if you have a concern that someone has a conflict of interest, sometimes we may forget given the circumstances, and just make sure that we look out for one another if there is a concern that's expressed. That's a big piece of this, I believe, as well as colleagues and looking at our code of ethics as well.
And I will point out that there is a provision, which I think sort of applies generally, that if members recuse themselves from consideration of a specific issue, that doesn't necessarily defeat the quorum. And ultimately, you could have the situation where a single council person is making the decision for the entirety of council or for the city, because everyone else has recused themselves. I don't think that's likely, but sort of just raise that to err on the side of caution and don't be concerned that, that's somehow going to affect at least the discussion of city business, because it can and will be heard ultimately, regardless of the folks who are actually recusing themselves.
I recall one time a couple of years ago, we came pretty darn close. I can't remember if it was down, I think it was down to 2 members of city council who could hear an issue. So that we've come close to the, one individual before, so.
Same thing happened in the planning commission.
Exactly.
Kind of sounds like you can't be too transparent regarding the code of ethics and disclosure.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chuck. Anyone else have any questions, observations on the conflict of interest or financial disclosure forms? Hearing none. Again, Janie's imposed due date is January 15th. And it's not that difficult. It's just takes time. So a lot of time and knock it out. Next item is the policy for public comments and behaviors for Lexington City Council meetings. That was included in your packet. Pretty self-explanatory. And this would be our standard policy for accepting public comments. And sometimes we may deviate from it depending upon the number of people in attendance. But does anybody have any questions or observations on this document? Very good. We will continue to utilize this and appreciate Jim and Jared working and reviewing all of these documents to make sure we're in compliance and moving forward in the coming year. Remind everyone, anybody who's listening beyond council, that we welcome public comments and the opportunity to listen to our constituents during every council meeting, the first and third Thursdays of each month. Discussion and questions. Anybody have anything on their mind related to organizational or things of that nature? Perhaps we allotted too much time for our work session this evening, but hearing no issues or observations, we'll continue our processes the way they are. We'll
Mr. Mayor, sorry, it took me a second to decide if I wanted to ask a question of my fellow council members, but I believe we've been utilizing our tablets for about a year, no longer receiving hard copies of the packets, and just to take the general temperature of fellow council members, if they feel that is working for them, if it's efficient, if they are able to read everything in a timely manner, make notes, etc.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, it is generally work for me, although I will say since the whole COVID thing and doing this from home in my office, I really haven't been using my laptop that much. In fact, I'm afraid I might have forgotten the login password. I need to check on that. So for me, it doesn't matter, but I'm usually printing it out anyway, but I'm happy to do that myself rather than have the city do that.
That's the problem I find, is that I end up printing it out anyway. And sometimes in those links, it's not included in the packet, and there's more information I didn't realize was out there. My preference, I like the having the packet pre-printed because I'm going to print it anyway.
Well, if we get back to, when we get back to meeting in person, it would be helpful to have at least a few packets available, I think. So I kind of agree with Leslie on that, but maybe we don't all need paper versions. I don't know. I feel bad about having the Lexington Police Department, drop them off to us. So I wouldn't want that to continue.
I completely agree with you, Dennis. If we were to wish to have paper, I think that it would be easy for us in a city of 2.5 square miles for us to come by City Hall on a Friday, on a Monday, whenever it might be, when they're ready for us, and we would not need to involve Lexington PD. That's a great point.
And maybe add a request for print option. So if it's a packet that you don't want printed, don't get it printed. If it is one you do want printed, get it printed and swing by as David and Dennis suggested and pick it on up.
What I've done in the past is to selectively print. I take a look at things that I want to mark up, and I'll selectively print that. Some of the other things are so routine that there wasn't a real need to print everything. So to print the 100% package every time, I think could be a waste of paper. I like the idea of being able to check off and selectively print. And I don't mind doing that at home.
When this originally started, the discussion about using the tablet, I had told Noah that sometimes eyesight prevents a person from being able to use a tablet to read all of the documents that we receive on a tablet. And it can be very helpful to have a paper copy where it's easier on the eyes. Also, for me personally, I'm jumping from one thing to another all the time. And it's nice to have my packet that I can just stick down in my bag and be able to, read something here or read something somewhere else, and, always have it handy and accessible.
I know my personal preference has always been the paper, and I've tried to adopt the electronic. When we went virtual, obviously where we're using our computers, Janie's putting things up and we're trying to visually watch one another, it becomes much, much more cumbersome than having a digital document in front of us. So if I'm hearing somewhat a consensus that if Janie can prepare packets for us Friday afternoons for council members to pick up, I would assume a good process would be for Janie to email when they're prepared, and then folks can stop by at their leisure to pick them up on Friday or certainly Monday. But love for us to move in that direction until we can get back in person. I'm very optimistic that once we have our these tablets just for the documents, it'll be much, much easier for us to navigate when we get back in person. Given the state of COVID, I don't know when that will be, but until then, unless there's an objection from anybody besides Janie, just kidding, would love to start getting packets for folks available. Just Janie notify us when they're available on Friday afternoons before the meetings. Does that sound reasonable, or are there any other details that make sense or preferences of council?
I vote for that, Mr. Mayor.
Really good. That clear to you, Janie?
I got it.
Sorry for the extra work, and sorry for the trees, but would want everyone to be as effective as possible, and we'll look forward to hopefully using the tablets in their originated fashion when we get in person soon. Any other questions or thoughts from council?
I'll just throw out that I said I would bring it up again in January, but I'd like council again to reconsider our meeting time starting at 7 and with work sessions at 6. So once we settle on a location, I'd like that to be part of the discussion as well on times. And if we're going to push off the discussion on location until we're meeting in person again, then I'd like the council be prepared. I'll give everyone a call and we can start talking about meeting times. I think it would help with participation, and we have continued to have meetings long into the night. We always seem to find a topic that extends them.
I would like to suggest meetings at 6 with work sessions at 5.
I can tell you that for me gets a little difficult with work and eating.
Yeah, I work till past then and have a family. Sorry, I'd have to probably bow out of this.
Yeah, I couldn't do it at 5 either. I could.
Well, I'll be glad to bring the toothpicks.
It's a circumstance of instead of being just tired, grouchy, and hungry is not the trifecta we're striving for. But as Leslie points out, until we meet in person, may be worth the seed is planted, and we can look at changing things as they go. I think David pointed out circumstances of summertime, 7 o'clock, heading over to a council meeting where you may not want to head there until later, spending time with your family or different circumstances. So the tradition, as discussed before, as a result of a desire to go home and have dinner with your family, get prepared and come to the meeting. And yes, we sometimes between citizens' remarks and other hot topics can go into the wee hours, but I think it's sometimes by choice of how we choose to handle some of the topics and issues. But thank you for following through on your promise to bring it back up, Leslie. And unless you all want to debate it some tonight, we you may lobby amongst yourselves and come up with a consensus as we work towards sometime in the future in person. If you're okay with continuing on our Zoom circumstance, you can stumble from your computer to the bed, or maybe carry your computer and sit in the bed if you'd like. Make it a little bit easier with these late night meetings. So. Any other topics or issues for discussion on our mode of operation?
I have a question. If
Yes,
we
sir.
were to change, if we were to agree on a change of meeting time, what kind of time lag would there be once we agree on it to the actual meeting itself?
As much as you all would negotiate, otherwise we could implement it the next meeting, I think, and I'd ask for clarification from Jared. I think if we chose to meet not on Thursdays, but for instance, Wednesdays, that would necessitate a change in our charter. But the actual meeting time and location are fluid and can change. We can meet virtually anywhere, as evidenced by our virtual meeting now, and at any time, as long as it's disclosed with the proper 2-week notice.
I would suggest considering 7 o'clock for the next meeting. We could bring that up in council. It's got to be. Go ahead.
Well, and I would be fine with that. It's not like if it doesn't work out, we couldn't change it in the future too. That's.
Any other observations from council or?
Well, I would say it's possibly, if we were to test out 7 o'clock as opposed to 8 o'clock, it might be easier to test that out while we're meeting remotely.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe rather than waiting to get together, we tried the 7 o'clock. I would be amenable to that. I don't have to do that, but if you guys wanted to try that, I'd be willing to do that.
That's what I was thinking too, Dennis, as well. And while we're not meeting physically, but virtually, then it's much easier to, make a slight change like that.
I do remember the last time we considered this, one consideration was that members of the press, specifically Doug Harwood, was not, that presented a conflict for him and made it unable for him to be at city council meetings. And we did consider having the press there important, but I don't know that may not be a concern as much lately, because I think he's viewing these after the fact these days anyway. So
We could try it for 2 months and see how it works.
Dennis, you raise a great point, and with the advent of the recording for Facebook Live, you're right. Doug said he doesn't always dial in at 8 o'clock on Thursdays. He'll watch it Friday night or some other time, which is convenient. And I think this format of the Facebook Live is much more useful than the audios. I think there are times that the audios weren't quite as clear, and I think we all can agree it's tough listening to something and not having a visual with it. So sometimes you can't hear people's expression of their face.
I don't want to put Janie on the spot, but I just want to make sure if we did move up the meeting time. I know before you said it worked for you. Do you have any conflicts if we move up the time?
Nope, no conflicts here.
Thank you.
And I will just say on the timing, it would be an ordinance. It's set by the ordinance that it's Thursdays at 8. So if you want to move quickly, in theory, we would add it to the agenda at the 8 o'clock meeting tonight to direct staff to propose a new ordinance. We could advertise that and have a vote on it at the, I guess we could have it at the meeting 2 weeks from now if we get that out Monday, I think, for, no, I guess it'd be 2. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, just a quick question for you. If we change the ordinance, is there a way to word the ordinance so that we don't have to go through the ordinance process if we wanted to change it back in 3 weeks? I mean, is there a way to make the ordinance say that the city manager will decide the meeting time under the direction? I mean, does it have to be in an ordinance at the end?
Yeah, because that is part of the charter, is that the council shall by ordinance fix the time and place of its meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that correction, because I was under the impression we were the day, but not the time, was fixed.
No, I think it's, I don't think the day is fixed either.
Okay.
I'll just run a search for Thursdays, but I'm pretty sure that it's in the date and time is in the ordinance, not in the charter. But
As the only
I
council
guess
member,
the bottom line is,
as the only
we
council
need to go through the
with children, and I do enjoy spending time with them, I'll share the same thing I shared once before. Well, Chuck, you're a high school senior. All right. I've attended a city meeting. I think it's over 20% of school nights for the last 6 years, between RARO, city council work sessions. The extra hour helps me, helps my family. But I'm one vote, and I respect the will of everyone, and certainly don't want to be a holdout. But as you look to attract younger people to serve on council that have other pressures like jobs, children, athletic events, dance lessons, etc., all of those items go past 6, past 7 if you're a coach of RARO, etc., if you have responsibilities of feeding kids, helping them with school. So you may lose out on young people wishing to serve on council.
I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to be facetious there, but I have walked in the shoes that Leslie has right now and serving on council and planning commission. And we were meeting at 8 o'clock and 5 o'clock on planning with planning commission. Did it have an impact? Absolutely. Would moving the meetings to 7 o'clock had an impact? Yes, absolutely. But I take your point, and it's worth taking into consideration.
I'll ask this in the form of a question to council. I don't know that we need to move so expeditiously that it's advertised the next 2 weeks and there's not a sense of urgency, but we want to step accurately more than and directing staff tonight, if that's the desire, certainly makes sense. I'll echo Chuck's comments and we're able to have a seventh grader once again. So time with family is critical and important, and is part of the circumstance. It was on council before and school board. It is not. It's a major time commitment, to be sure. And I personally, as a parent, found 8 o'clock to be much more palatable, to be able to have dinner, spend some time with my family and get organized. And I don't have a vote unless you all tie, but I would lobby for the meeting times that we're currently utilizing. But in our open meeting, we want to, if there's no, or we can entertain a motion for a potential change, directing staff to look at that. And Jared, did you find it in the charter by chance, or are you looking?
I think it is, the day is not fixed by charter. I think it's by ordinance.
Okay. Very good. Well, we'll look forward to doing it accurately with your guidance from that standpoint. Any other topics for discussion? Hearing none, that covers all the material that we anticipate in our work session. And the time is 7:36. I will adjourn our meeting and ask that we all return a few minutes before 8 so we can start promptly at 8 o'clock.
Do we leave the meeting?
Don't have to. I mean, you can stop your video, or I don't know that Janie, if you stop the Facebook Live, will be easy enough to turn back on?
If I stop it, I'm not sure how difficult it will be to
Crank
start
it
it back up.
Okay. We'll just let people know that there will be dead time as we're adjourned, and we'll pick back up at 8 o'clock. Thank you, Janie. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the January 7th, 2021 meeting for Lexington City Council. Welcome all who are tuned in via Zoom and also via Facebook Live. Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you for being here. Mr. Alligood, congratulations on your victory in November, as well as Leslie and Marilyn. But Mr. Alligood, this being your first meeting as an elected official, welcome. We're glad you're here and look forward to the contributions that you'll make on behalf of your service for the citizens of Lexington.
Thank you very much.
Next item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you all stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
United
of
States
the
of
United States of
the
America,
Republic for
the
which
Republic,
and
which
one nation,
one
under
nation,
God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
Justice for
liberty
all.
and justice
justice
for all.
for all.
Thank you all very much. Next item on the agenda is consideration of the agenda, and do have a request to add a few items to the agenda. Under presentations, I've invited Chief Dickerson, who has very timely information, to join the city manager for a short presentation regarding COVID updates, as well as vaccination procedures. A second item would be under new business, the Paddler's Tax resolution regarding a new tax enacted by that came about January 1 that was enacted in the most recent General Assembly in the fall. And number 3, a closed session to discuss items important to council. And if there, I would welcome a motion to accept those additions to the agenda and welcome any questions.
So moved.
Thank you, Chuck.
Second.
Second, Ms. Strawn. All in favor of approval of the agenda with those modifications signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all very much. Next item, I'd like to take a point of personal privilege and offer a moment of silence. As you, I'm sure, are aware, Ted Delaney passed away recently, and he was an educator, a life learner, and a leader in our community. Many of his accomplishments are detailed in the New York Times, where he was recognized by the paper under Lives Lived. We pause to honor Ted Delaney, the father, the husband, the mentor, the teacher, and the man of courage and conviction. I invite you all to join me in a moment of silence in recognition of the life of Ted Delaney. Thank you all very much. There are gentle giants in our community that do great things, and he is certainly amongst them. And thank you all for your indulgence and consideration of that moment of silence. Next, I think there were some members of council who wanted to make some public statements in no particular order. I know that Leslie, you had indicated you wanted to speak, and I'll pick on you first.
Sure. I'd like to comment about the events that happened yesterday. Like many of you, I watched in horror at the events that transpired at the United States Capitol yesterday. I am disgusted and outraged by the violence and the attack on our government and our Constitution. As a local representative of Lexington, Virginia, I am appalled that our United States Representative Ben Cline and State Delegate Ronnie Campbell contributed to the assault on our democracy by promoting disinformation and unsubstantiated claims that the 2020 elections were compromised. I would like to thank all of our local voting officials and volunteers, sorry, from all political parties and independents for working with our registrar, Jan Yao, to successfully conduct the election of 2020. Having observed the polls several times during the voting process, I was impressed by our election officials' efforts to conduct a safe, efficient, and accurate election. Thank you to our election workers for your service to our community and our country.
Thank you, Leslie. Ms. Alexander, I believe you wanted to make a statement as well.
Marilyn, you're muted.
Muted. There we go.
I hear the question all the time with people saying, how did we get here? How did we get here? And I started to go there in this conversation this evening about how we did get here. And I also started to describe the many conspiracy theories, the years of disrespect, the bullying, the callousness that seemingly became acceptable in this country. But I decided that there was no need to rehash any of that because in actuality, we already know. But fast forward to today, we currently have local representatives, elected officials working for us in Richmond and in Washington, who were elected just as we were to advocate for the needs of our communities right here. However, they have instead chosen to rebuke the Constitution, our electoral process in Virginia and beyond, as well as the smooth transition of power in our country. And we had no control over the resulting horror of those actions that the entire world witnessed yesterday. So I suggest what we can focus on is right here locally, right now, more so today than ever before, is to make sure that our senior citizens feel safe and are safe, and that we are respectful and we're caring. We ensure that our families have enough food and adequate shelter. We keep encouraging the utmost in COVID prevention and safety measures, find ways to provide enough qualified staff and affordable childcare options to relieve working parents of all children in need, not just the selected few children, and to keep doing our best to educate our children in this pandemic and into the future with a great emphasis, please, on our history, our unredacted history, an accurate history, as well as focus on critical thinking skills for all of our children. Yesterday, I kept hearing the words, "This is our country, this is our house," over and over. And even though the rest of us could repeat those words just as forcefully, somehow I doubt that the words we heard yesterday included many of us. So when our representatives act as though all of their constituents collectively are not included in their particular agenda, we on a local level must work harder right here at home to practice civility and to hunker down and take care of and watch out for each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander. Are there other members of council who'd like to make statements this evening?
I'd like to make a brief one.
Please.
Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, I would like to express my appreciation to the 20,673 citizens of Lexington, Buena Vista, and Rockbridge County who participated and cast their valuable vote in the November 3rd general election. Numerous citizens, many our own friends and neighbors, navigated the pandemic and did their civic duty as citizens of the United States of America, which is the greatest democracy on the planet. To these voters, I say thank you. And then to our general registrars, our boards of elections, and our local poll workers, I also express my deep appreciation for conducting our elections safely, securely, and efficiently. Specifically here in Lexington, the attention to detail of the entire operation was at a gold medal standard. And therefore, it is because of my deep respect for our country and our right to vote, and for those who facilitated the election process, and of course, those who have served our great country so that we have this right, I am deeply saddened that our region's own elected US congressman attempted to nullify millions of certified and legally cast votes of United States citizens, and our very own elected state delegate who took such concerning action in signing a letter to the vice president in an attempt to nullify every last one of our votes in Virginia. So while we are in the midst of a pandemic that yesterday killed 3,920 people, which is more than died on 9/11, in the midst of a pandemic that is devastating businesses, disrupting education of our youth, and has taken from our community numerous loved ones who were absolute selfless pillars of our area, our own elected representatives were attempting to mislead the public and subvert democracy in broad daylight for us all to witness. I'm not a scholar of history. I'm not a trained lawyer. Instead, I'm simply a locally elected official in Lexington, Virginia, who wants to do his own small part to serve his community. If I don't want to do my duties, if I cannot fulfill my duties, I'd step aside. If the job is too big for me, I'd step aside. If I'm not up for it, I'd step aside. You see, I'm a son, I'm a husband, I'm a father to 2 school-age kids. I'm not a full-time politician, but I know better. I know better. I know an assault on our democracy when I see it. And so yesterday, when my wife and I were struggling to explain what we were witnessing on TV to our kids, and we were struggling to then explain the actions of our elected officials and other elected officials, we had to just stop and say, they cannot be explained. They are inexcusable. So in closing, as we approach Monday, January 18th, which is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, I offer a famous quote of his. The vote is the most powerful instrument ever devised by human beings for breaking down injustice and destroying the terrible walls which imprison people because they are different from others. You see, these words are very accurate. It's because of these words, it's because of the right to vote, that we together as a community must stand up and send a message to our elected representatives that they cannot disrespect Lexington voters, Buena Vista voters, Rockbridge County voters, or voters of the Shenandoah Valley. They have taken an oath to the Constitution of Virginia, to serve Virginia and the United States. And if they're not up for it, they need to step aside.
Thank you, Mr. Sig.
I just have one thing to say. My fellow council members have eloquently covered much of my thoughts on this, but I have to say our democracy falls apart if our politicians on either side of the aisle pander to the worst elements of their base and feed into conspiracy theories rather than working to dispel them. Our system of government and the tradition of peaceful transfer of power needs better guardians than what a couple of our state and federal representatives provided us this past week. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Chuck.
If I may, the first meeting of the year, on occasion, I have taken the opportunity to remind the listeners and viewers of our city council meetings, the oath of office that council people take, as well as other elected officials in Virginia. 4 of us here recently recited this oath, and I think it's worth repeating as a reminder, again, to those that are listening and watching. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge all the duties incumbent on me as according to the best of my ability, in parentheses, so help me God. I think it's also worth reciting the oath of office that our nationally elected officials also take. And that reads, I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter. So help me God. I think that's worth adding for additional context and reminder of what we're dealing with in these times and what is expected of those we elect.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Anyone else?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes, I would like to totally endorse the comments of my fellow council members. I couldn't have said it better. I totally support what Mr. Ziegler, Ms. Alexander, and Ms. Strong, and Mr. Smith, and Mr. Ayers have all said. I would stand up with them and stand with them. Thank you very much, and it shouldn't have happened.
Thank you, Mr. Alligood. Along the lines of point of personal privilege, I join my colleagues to say thank you and well done to the election officials and voters of our community and our Commonwealth. I also join my colleagues in speaking out against the violence, destruction of property, and unlawful behavior. It's gravely disappointing to see the recklessness that occurred in our nation's capital. And I concur also with the words of C.S. Lewis, who shared, there are far better things ahead than any we leave behind. The next item on our agenda is presentations. And I'd like to call on Chief Dickerson to share some insights and observations and way forward with the chaos of COVID. Ty, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you letting me talk to you a little bit tonight on some dynamic and fluid and changing information. I'm trying to bring my own notes up here. I've sent these notes to the council with several attachments. That the attachments, Janie, I hope we'll be able to get out on the website for the public in our extensive list of COVID information that's out there. Virginia is currently in phase 1A, and that's part of those lists, the phases 1A, 1B, and 1C. The 1B and the 1C stuff literally arrived to us electronically about 4:30 this afternoon. So we're just starting to go through those. The phase 1A, as you can see when you look at that, is primarily the healthcare providers. Last week we hosted New Year's Eve. We hosted a vaccine clinic here and did 73 tests. Today we did another vaccine clinic and did 125 tests. After that, phase 1B includes categories that are called essential workers, firefighters who do not do EMS, police officers, hazmat workers, grocery store workers, food processing, etc. Governor Northam in this week's press conference also mentioned the following groups would be given high priority in the phase 1B: teachers and childcare workers, those 75 and older, and those who work in transit, food processing, and the energy sectors. And you can see that reflected in the 1B in-depth memo that VDH served to us today. Those 65 and older will probably be in the 1C group. Interesting to note that vaccinations are being provided by as many qualified sources as possible, to include our local hospital, the Rockbridge Area Health Center, pharmacies. They've been contracted right now to take care of nursing homes. That's in part of a nationwide program, and possibly even some paramedics. There's some training being rolled out to allow paramedics to administer the vaccine. Capacity of the delivery of the vaccines is one part of the formula. Getting the people most at risk through scientific analysis is another part of it. I also learned today from talking to a VDH staffer that VDH is working with local pharmacies and other care providers expected to be used in future phases for public when the time comes. So people may be able to go to their local primary care physician or a local pharmacy, not now, but in the future when their group of folks are up and due for the dose. Statistics as of yesterday, Virginia has received 482,000 doses and delivered 116,200 of those. Interesting note to put this into perspective. We all want it done as quickly as possible, but Virginia, the governor noted yesterday, there's 8.5 million people in the Commonwealth. Everybody's got to get 2 doses. That's 17 million injections, 17 million in syringes and alcohol preps and Band-Aids. Regionally here, as you all know, our COVID numbers are at the highest they've been since the start of the pandemic, and the UVA model projects that it does not peak until mid-February. The regional task force with emergency management working with VDH, who's the lead on this, is working to resume free community testing. And we found out today that the first new next free community testing site will be next week. More on the exact date and time on that, to be located probably at the 911 center in Buena Vista. You know, one of the challenges there is that many of the staff who are now doing the vaccine are the same staff that was doing the testing. Local VDH staff hope that the National Guard will be able to fill the testing gap with local assistance. I'd already talked about some of the statistics, you know, around 200 of the, just 200 people in the phase 1A that have been vaccinated here at the Lexington Fire Station. I encourage you to take time to read those vaccination prioritization guidances, the 1A, 1B, 1C, those lists, and also the, I forget the name of it, the First Cities document. That is a good review of set of notes on the governor's press conference from yesterday. EM Task Force continues to be briefed at least weekly with the health district officials. Dr. Cornegay and others of her staff, we do a Zoom meeting at least once a week. And at other of these events, we're in person with those folks talking to them. And I'm open for questions.
Ty, thank you very much. Members of council, do you have any questions or concerns to share with the chief? Hearing none, Chief Dixon, thank you again. I indicated to council members previously, citizens had called in concerned and worried that we didn't have a good coherent path forward for our vaccinations, but I hope that people feel more confident and certainly are more competent at this point, but it is an ever-changing process, and grateful for your and your team's work to oversee this and lead our community with this task of dealing with COVID and getting people vaccinated. So again, thank you.
You're welcome. And you know, really the lion's share of this work is, and the gratitude goes to the Virginia Department of Health. We're just here to facilitate the logistics, and we promise to share information to you as quickly as we get it. 2 of those attachments that Janie can now share to the public literally arrived in my email at 4:30 this afternoon.
Excellent. So we have the latest and the greatest, and Dr. Cornegay and her team are working tirelessly. I know it's not a big team, so when you meet with her, please express the gratitude of City Council and the City of Lexington for her efforts for our region.
And if I may take a minute, the Lions part of the sharing of this information with our citizens is done with that special COVID webpage that we've set up that Janie manages. And I have sent her stuff all hours of the day, all days of the week. And oftentimes within just a few minutes, she's replied that she's taken care of it, that she's on it. So it's not wait until the next business day or anything. She is often getting that information turned around out to the citizens in record time.
Absolutely. Lots of good work, and be remiss if we didn't remind everyone to keep their distance, wear a mask, and wash their hands. Ty, thank you again for being with us, and thank you for the work that you and your team do in our community. Next item on the agenda is consideration of minutes. You had the December 17, 2020 City Council regular meeting, where those were in your packet. Were there any corrections or changes that anyone felt necessary? Hearing none, we will accept the minutes approved as presented, and thank you, Janie. Next item is citizens' remarks and comments. I do believe we have one individual who is going to Zoom in and join us. Young lady by the name of Bridget Kelly. Bridget, are you with us? Janie, I don't see her in the participants, but that may be my bad eyes.
I don't see her either. I did send her the Zoom information.
Okay.
I'll touch base with her again and see what's going on.
Okay. And I understand the topic that she wanted to address concerned the parking and traffic on North Main Street with the construction that VMI is beginning. So hope that she'll be able to join us. If not, we'll convey her comments as we may receive them. Next, and I'm not, Janie, no one else that you're aware of?
That was all I had.
Terrific, thank you. Next item is reports and commissions. I'd call on Mr. Smith for the Blue Ridge Resource Authority.
Excuse me. Blue Ridge Resource Authority meets Monday. Quick update on activities there. The second $150,000 has been deposited in the higher yielding Virginian Investment Pool Fund. We are now the BRRA is now independently handling their VRS administration. So we anticipate the costs affiliated with that previously to be reduced. Those are the highlights. Quick note, Mr. Alligood joined Jim and me on a tour yesterday. The cap on the old cell is coming along beautifully. It's now green and lush instead of brown and slimy. Everyone is running hard. I think we're out of some of the woods we were in before, and looking forward to that operation being successful in the future. And that's about the conclusion of my report. Any questions?
Thank you, Chuck. And I will point out for everyone's benefit, the 7 o'clock meeting on Monday is in person and or Zoom. So if you'd like to join, you can do so from the comfort of your living room or other destination. I've been alerted that with it being January, the term for service on the Blue Ridge Resource Authority is 1 year, and would ask for council's consideration to reappoint Chuck and myself as the representatives on the Blue Ridge Resource Authority for calendar year 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Leslie. A second by David. Any discussion? No one's pining for it? Just kidding. Roll call vote. Mr. Ayers.
I'm sorry, did you say Ayers?
Yes, sir.
Sorry. Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Ms. Strong.
Aye.
Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. And so Chuck and I will legitimately serve as representatives on Monday at 7 o'clock. I've just been alerted that Ms. Kelly has been able to join the meeting, and I will backtrack just a moment and call on Ms. Kelly. Welcome to our meeting, and look forward to your comments. Ask you to address your comments to council, and you have the floor.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. And let me, sometimes with this virtual world, I get out of sync or confused. If you could please state your name and address for the clerk and for our record as per our policy.
Okay, my name is Bridget Kelly Deering, and I live at 53A Welch's Beach Road in Lexington.
Thank you, ma'am.
So I'm writing about specifically a couple of things. Actually, in listening to the meeting, I'm sorry I had trouble connecting. I'm just audio, right? Not video.
Correct.
I did want to agree, let you know that I am in total agreement with the board members rebuking the violence on our nation's capital. It was shameful and deeply hurt us domestically and internationally, and I'm really sorry to have seen it. But I'm actually writing today, I'm Zooming today to specifically talk about the sudden lack of parking on North Main Street. Rockbridge Music Store has been in its current location for at least 30 years, really more than that, and is a beloved fixture in Lexington. Diana started out in 1985 in the little mall that was originally in the Livery, but moved to her current location after a few years. And it seems to me that Lexington has control of its streets and the parking available on them. If VMI wants to build an aquatic center, fine, but parking should remain open in front of it. I understand that could prove impossible during construction, but from the pictures that I saw posted, it looks like no parking when it's completed. This is unacceptable. Why do the 2 or 3 parking spots on the opposite side of the street from the store have to be closed now? These spots have never been ideal, but we do use them. Even during construction, these parking spaces should remain open. Lexington needs to demand that BMI leaves the parking open in front of the aquatic center after completion. It's unbelievable to me that it's gotten this far. How many other businesses have been operating in a downtown storefront continuously for 35 years? Lexington can't tax VMI either, right? I'm pretty sure Rockbridge Music Store has been paying their taxes for decades. All of this after shutting down traffic 4 times this year to work on and pave Main Street, sometimes rerouting traffic around the music store for days at a time. One can understand that roads have to be paved, but I'm pretty sure the city did major work 4 times on our section of Main Street this year alone. Why not do all of this work at one time? COVID is killing small businesses all over our country, but here in Lexington, we have to battle that and the city's lack of planning to keep our beloved music store open. The city has the right to designate parking on its streets, as well as how many times they close the streets to work on them. The planned bus cutout in front of the aquatic center should be shared with the track complex and be located in between them. If anybody had done a study on the impact of parking spaces in relation to the aquatic center, they would know that the public regularly parks almost to the end of the proposed curb cutout. It makes a lot of sense to move the cutout to an area in between the 2 sport complexes so they can share it, and so the public can continue to park to the end of the proposed cutout area. But no parking up immediately after that area currently proposed. I have never seen it go beyond that except on VMI game days and graduations. I could go on. I'm upset about this, but I just really hope that City Council and VMI, all the players involved, will look at these small businesses at the end of North Main Street and help them to stay in business. And I appreciate your time.
Bridget, thank you for your comments and for joining us this evening. I would ask the city manager to, if I'm sure he can obtain your telephone number from Janie for follow-up to discuss the details of parking and how that construction process. I can assure you that most of us on council probably don't know and certainly are not prepared to respond to that. But thank you again for
let's just work to save our small businesses on North Main.
Amen. All over town. And COVID has been crushing, and your observation brings back memories of the bumpy downtown, and then we dug up the streets to put in new water lines. We've asked and imposed a lot of disruption on our local businesses, and we
And
really need.
unfortunately, those small businesses at the very end are in a weird position because it's right where it splits. So it's not like you can go down one side. It completely shuts down.
Exceedingly aware and very grateful for you bringing the issue to our attention. And I can assure you the city manager will be following up with you to discuss the details and ways forward for continued support by the city of our local businesses.
Thank you very much.
Thank
That's all I ask.
We'll go back to our boards and commissions and Main Street Lexington report. Ms. Strong.
And no report for Main Street Lexington. And also talking about reappointments for RANA. I'm the representative for RANA. In February, my term is up, so I can either be reappointed or you can appoint somebody else.
Thank you, Leslie. Planning Commission.
No report.
You're just full of information this evening. Regional Tourism Board. Mr.
Yeah, Tourism Board will meet next on Wednesday, January 20th, but I did have a couple items I wanted to mention. The first one's kind of exciting. Hulu is filming an 8-episode miniseries based on the book Dope Sick by Beth Macy, and it's being directed by Barry Levinson. It stars Rosario Dawson and Michael Keaton. Anyway, Buena Vista had been in the running along with Clifton Forge as a potential filming location for this series. And the producers have been working with regional tourism to scout locations. Ultimately, the filmmakers opted to film in Clifton Forge, but while they're filming here at Clifton Forge, the production crew will be staying right here in Lexington. They're renting out the entire Hampton Inn from January 25th through the month of February. So that's a bit of good news for our hotels. Speaking of the Hampton Inn, the hotel reports being near capacity this weekend also, with a lot of Amish folks in town for the Horse Center's Pennsylvania Harness Horse Sale this weekend. Just a reminder that email invites will soon be going out to local government office holders for the Shenandoah Valley Tourism Partnership annual meeting. This year's meeting will be held on Thursday, January 21st at 10 a.m. via Zoom, and you might already have received a save the date email about it. The meeting will include presentations about the current and future picture for tourism in the Shenandoah Valley from Rita McClenny of the Virginia Tourism Corporation and Eric Terry of the Virginia Restaurant, Lodging and Travel Association. I wanted to mention an actual live outdoor event to look forward to this spring. Get ready for the 14th annual Rockbridge Bull and Oyster Fest at the Virginia Horse Center on April 3rd. From 1 to 5 p.m. It's an afternoon of oysters, barbecues, games, and live music from Gary Rulli and the Mule Train. And all proceeds from this event will benefit the Rockbridge Area Health Center. And if you need more information, you can contact Craig Vinecombe at the Rockbridge Area Health Center. And just one other thing, not necessarily tourism related, I did want to mention, and that's the passing of Mary Carol Moore. Some of you folks might know her. She died of COVID complications on Monday evening, and she was a lifelong Rockbridge resident and a Balloons Over Rockbridge board member and a beloved local teacher. And what's more, she never stopped teaching, and even after she retired. And just last year, she was kind enough to be one of several ladies to teach me how to play Mahjong. So I thank her for that, and I'll miss her, and I'm sure a lot of people in our community will too. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Any questions? Lots of exciting things coming about with the Bull and Oyster Fest, and very exciting news to hear our hotels are being utilized.
Yeah.
Great news for all of those folks. RARO, Mr. Ziegler.
The RARO Board of Directors met last night. We have not been doing programs recently, but we're making plans to restart basketball. As of Tuesday, in conversations with the city schools and the Rockbridge County schools, they're still on schedule to open on the 19th, and upon the schools reopening to their students, the gyms would be available to RARO for basketball use. Once we restart basketball, we're planning to have the participants wear masks 100% of the time, with, of course, with small breaks, but they would be doing the activities wearing masks. Parents would not be allowed in the gyms, and we would limit the number of students, participants in the gyms. So that's something that we're working on. Also, we're not going to charge for any of those activities since everything's so fluid. Additionally, we're working on our budget. As we've got our interim executive director, Daryl Plogger. He's been working hard on the budget. We're really fortunate to have him since he's been with the organization for so long. And then we're also fortunate to work with Jake, because so much of the information comes from the city of Lexington for that budget building. One thing that we might be adding to our budget this year is taking on the expense of watering some of the fields that are used for RARO, and that those would be city fields and also the field at Maury River Middle School. Since those fields are used predominantly by RARO participants, we're evaluating if we're able to take those costs that the city currently incurs and Maury River Middle School incurs and put them into our budget so that they are shared between the localities. So those are a couple of things we're working on. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Members of council have any questions for David? Hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Ziegler. Eager for sports to get fired back up. It's a great thing for our children and for our children's parents for social purposes, and just the joy I know share with Ms. Strawn from when our sons were playing basketball, and great way to spend your winter Sundays in the gym, Saturdays rather, at RARO tournaments and games. So I'm sorry that people are missing out on that, and look forward to when we can get in person, but the efforts that RARO is doing and the creativity, very grateful, and grateful to Daryl Plogger for serving as interim during this transitional time. Thank you. Threshold, Ms. Alexander.
No report. Did you
Yeah.
hear me the first time?
I didn't hear you the first time. You were muted. I was trying to read your lips there. Under my report, information has been flying fast. I feel over the past probably 30, 60 days, there's just been arguably so much motion and commotion. One of the things that we'll take up later in the meeting is looking at ideas and ways to support our downtown businesses in retail sales. Didn't see a terrible need for that from the early reports, but in reporting today, the numbers are pretty disappointing. Looking the numbers that Jake has provided from the treasurer's office, revenues are down, certainly not to what we budgeted, thank goodness, but we've seen that what we were concerned about becoming a reality. And I just reference, if you haven't taken a look at those sales tax, utility tax, meals tax, et cetera, take some time to look at that, encourage members of the public. I know it'll likely be covered in coverage by our newspapers locally. But disappointed to see those revenues declining, and encourage people to continue to shop local and support our local businesses despite the obstacles that Bridget was talking about earlier. If you didn't hear, as a parent received an email from Washington Lee, and they're proposing a staggered opening. The law school and upperclassmen, I think, will arrive on the as early as the 11th. Juniors on the 18th, and or sophomores on the 18th, and freshmen on the 25th. So it'll look a little bit different, and all the students won't arrive at the same time. Again, COVID-related issues, but personally, I'm elated to hear Washington Lee is bringing their students back for this term, and hope that things go smoothly and positively for the Washington Lee campus and family. Of course, VMI, I think we briefed at the last meeting, is planning on bringing the core back on the 12th, if I remember correctly. So they will be coming back soon too. I also received a phone call from a citizen on McCormick Street who lives adjacent to a chicken owner. He expressed extreme displeasure and frustration over having chickens as his neighbor. And I've referred him to the city planner and the city manager to ensure that whomever that person is abiding by the rules that have been set forth, and a good chicken owner, as it were. But he asked me the question if he thought that it was inappropriate for council to ever allow chickens, and what it would take for that to be reversed. And I told him that it would take an act of city council, and encouraged him to please talk to the planner and the city manager about that process, as well as the accuracy of and the quality of compliance of the neighbor. But just wanted to alert you to that concern, that and specifically that individual asked me to bring it and make council aware, which is the reason I mentioned it here tonight. So I don't have any other details, but there may be more to come depending upon the conversations with city staff. And that is all I have for my report tonight. And I'll call on city manager for his report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to start first with COVID, and I'm sorry to say that we now have 2 positive cases in the fire department, also 2 positive cases in Public Works, and 1 in our management team. This is in addition to the 1 case in the police department I reported just a week or so ago. Now, all these cases have been contracted through social interactions outside the workplace. They're not being communicated in the workplace. And we're seeing the same spike that the community as a whole is seeing. I also want to note, though, that these cases are beginning to have a small impact on our workplace and on the amount of work that some of our departments can get done. So we're just experiencing the same thing everyone else is experiencing today. I want to comment on the orientation of Mr. Alligood, our newest council member. He spent Monday and Tuesday with me, and we visited most of the departments and regional entities that provide services to the city and our citizens. And it was a whirlwind tour. We didn't finish it all, but many of the department heads and agency heads have told me they were very thankful that Mr. Alligood took the time to meet with them and get to hear about their operations and experience what they provide to the citizens in our community. So that was time well spent. One of the other aspects of the COVID outbreak that we're seeing here is our building inspector services also as the building inspector in Buena Vista. And the Buena Vista inspector serves us as well when we need backup. Today, the Buena Vista building inspector has come down with COVID. So Steve Polk, our building inspector, is doing double duty, and he drives from here to Buena Vista to do inspections for the next 2 weeks. So he will be doubly busy and stretched a little thin himself. Also recently, the police department went through a recertification activity with our VCIN, and that's the Virginia Criminal Information Network. And it's a very important law enforcement tool. And this recertification was to assure that proper practices are followed when using VCIN, and also that it's in compliance with all state police policies. You may have seen today in the news, or recently in the news, that our outdoor sanitizing stations were noted. We have put in, that is Public Works has put in 5 permanent stations in and around the downtown, and WDBJ Channel 7 did feature them, and our own HR director, Robbie Bailey, was available to make some statements. Robbie has spearheaded almost all of the COVID equipment and personal protective devices, et cetera, that we've had to have for the city and the schools. So he's been very active outside of his job as Human Resources Director. You may have also seen recently that the governor has indicated he'd like to see the minimum wage in Virginia increase from the current rate of $9.50 an hour to $15 an hour by 2026. And while this will be completed in phases, and it is a well-deserved change in wages for all of the workers here in Virginia. It will, of course, have some incremental and slight increases to our budget over the years to come. So I don't think it's dramatic, but it will obviously be seen in our budget, and it's really a good thing for the residents here in our Commonwealth. As Chief Dickerson noticed, or indicated, we have had several vaccinations for Tier 1 workers, Tier 1A workers at the fire department. And I think he also indicated that several other vaccination events will occur over the weeks to come for those same workers who are in that essential category, and some of the 1B essential workers as well, perhaps. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Members of council have a question for the city manager? Very good. Hearing none, city attorney report.
Good evening, everyone. I have no report or update at this time.
That is succinct. Next item is new business. And the first item is the Main Street Lexington Business Assistant request.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm going to be very brief and let our Main Street Lexington Director, Rebecca Logan, who's with us now online, carry the bulk of this briefing. I do want to note, though, as several of you have noted, these are tough times for our businesses in the community. And my consideration and concern is that if possible, we provide some aid or assistance to those businesses in a timely basis. This may not be the way of doing it or going forward, but Rebecca and I did sit down together, and she spent a lot of time thinking about what might be available to our business community. And so this is a suggestion. I think it's a good suggestion. I would not have brought it before you, but we are available to answer any questions you may have and do any further research you may require of us. So if Rebecca's ready, I'm ready to cede to her.
I'm ready. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you so much for the opportunity to present this program. As Jim and I, as Jim just mentioned, that we have gotten together several times. This was a conversation that was started almost still back around Thanksgiving, but we did decide to put this off until the darker, quieter months of the winter. And so we sat down with staff, Jim and I spoke, then we pulled a few businesses, and we came up with this plan of we're calling it a voucher program. We're also using the working title of Lex Bucks, which is simply a working title. But the idea is to get some money into the hands of our residents so that we can encourage them to shop downtown while there's fewer visitors and fewer shoppers, hopefully to have some folks that aren't quite so familiar with our downtown be comfortable to come downtown. So these vouchers would be put into the utility bills that we would send out, the city sends out at the end of January. We've allowed ourselves enough time, if this program is approved, to get this in order so that these vouchers are available and ready to go. Let's see. We're thinking that we would restrict this to only residents. Obviously, there are plenty of business utility bills that goes out. So those businesses would be taken away from this, and it's only to the residents. We think that this is probably the best way to do it because it doesn't require that folks have to go out and use their own money to purchase a card or a voucher. They're just handed out to them, and then we would like for them to shop at the businesses that we would include with the voucher, the list of businesses that would participate in this program. And the way we intend to do that is to send out a form to all city businesses. This is not just the businesses in the C1 district that is our district we work with closely, but with all of the businesses licensed in the city that have either a storefront and or multiple employees. We're going to use the same criteria that we used for the CARES money that we distributed in 2 rounds, which was very successful. And we're hoping that this form not only serves as a way to help us figure out which businesses will be interested in participating, but also will help us to educate the businesses how this would work so that they understand that if someone comes to them with a voucher, that they contact Main Street and Main Street will then reimburse them for that money. So upon approval of this, we would get this, the vouchers printed. We think that's also a good idea that it's an odd denomination because it will not compete with the Main Street Lexington gift certificate program, which are in denominations of 5s, 10s, 25s, and 50s. So the businesses won't be confused by this. We did a couple of, in our packet that we sent to you, we did some research. I gave you one example of what Carlsbad, California has done because they did so much really in-depth market research. So you may have had some time to look at that. There's the form that we're going to use to reach out to businesses. We are going to model that on what Blacksburg did so that businesses can opt into the program. Okay. I think I'm done there. I could add a few more comments, but I wonder if anyone has any questions so far.
Rebecca, so would the participating vendors, would they be listed on Main Street Lexington's website? Would you have like a landing page or something which to give them information? And would the actual vouchers have a identifying number that was tied to the utility customer in Lexington, or do we not need to worry about that?
No, actually, that was something that we discussed. There was some discussion about potential of fraud. Now, we have not had any fraud whatsoever with our Main Street gift certificate program, but as it came up in conversation, we also have those marked with a specific certificate number, and we also know who purchased them. So yes, Dennis, I think that it would be wise for us to mark these with individual numbers. I don't know exactly how they will be recorded as far as do we keep a list of what residents get what number? These are all little details that need to be figured out upon approval. We didn't spend a lot of time getting into the weeds. Of course, if this is approved, we've given ourselves a few weeks to work on those details. But so, and to answer your question, not only would we put a list of participating businesses on our website, we would also include that in a letter that goes out to the residents with the voucher so that they understand what this is. One thing I did neglect to mention is that it has a very specific expiration date. The purpose of this program was to get some dollars into our downtown while the shops were quiet and not so many, normal shoppers on the street, because it's normally a quiet time of year, to say nothing of what COVID may do this year. So it will expire upon an approved date with City Council would agree, but we're thinking nothing later than the 1st of April, because usually by mid-March, things start picking up.
I think this sounds like a great idea. I'm wondering, and I'm certainly in favor of it, but just throwing something else out there, is this something that could maybe be included in the homeowner's utility bill to save the cost of doing a separate mailing, or do you think that that would be confusing? And it seems like the number that could be on it would be the account number for that homeowner, I guess.
That's a good.
But no, this sounds great. It's wonderful.
Rebecca, I've got so many concerns about this program. It's using, in theory, CARES Act funds, and this idea didn't even come through the CARES Act committee. This is the first we're really hearing of it. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, is this being used as an economic development tool or something else? Because it concerns me that, like we have said as a city all along, our plan from day one was to be ready to inject approximately 6 figures again into the local economy in the spring via applications to businesses that are hurting, We've already injected about $250,000
Mhm.
funds from Lexington. Local businesses have received PPP. They've received Rebuild Virginia. Now hopefully some could get PPP again. If hopefully Rebuild Virginia has another $100 million available. And it concerns me that if we're leaning on this to help businesses, let's just say this $42,000 and we took applications and people proved that their revenues are off, just like we've been spending the other $250,000. Let's say we wanted a business to get $1,000. That means that they need 50 customers at a minimum, probably 75 because of their profit margins, 75 customers to walk into one business and redeem this. And I get concerned that that might not be realistic in the midst of a pandemic when the governor's telling people actually not to go out. Is there has any thought been there? Matt, as a consumer, I'm not a business owner, but as a consumer, sometimes I think that the florists might be hurting. Certain businesses are hurting, and those are not the businesses where I'd be spending a $20 voucher. And if all it would potentially take is Kroger to say, we'll be participating in this program, or Sheetz or Dollar General or Wendy's or Arby's, and all of a sudden this has a different impact than we hoped.
I can address quite a few of those concerns. First of all of the franchise businesses that you mentioned just now, Arby's, McDonald's, Kroger, CVS, they would not be eligible because they are franchise backed or corporate, countrywide corporate backed. So they were not eligible for the CARES money either, because they are not small locally owned businesses. So they're automatically not even invited to participate. We are not asking the small businesses to apply for this. We're simply saying to them, we're implementing this program. Would you like to participate? And they say yes or no. There's no application. To address your concern about the amount of money, is it significant? It's certainly not as significant as the 2 rounds of CARES money that we all did through the city. This has probably a different, let's say a different focus, and that is it's a nice thing for council to do for the residents of the city. It doesn't require them spending their own money. We're thinking that perhaps we might actually engage in a broader audience that may not be as familiar with our downtown or participate in not only just shopping, but just any of the opportunities when we have these promotions that they're just not engaged in or they're not aware of. And so, we polled a couple of businesses and they said, heck, if we get a couple, say, 3, 4, 5 new customers coming into the store who have never walked into the store, yes, we would participate, because that then builds an opportunity for us to engage with some new potential business people for down the road, or potential customers for down the road. So it's a relationship building situation. It is not a super meaningful injection of finances to our small businesses. It has a different focus.
And that's my concern. I felt so good about the $250,000 of CARES Act funds that regionally, the percentage that the city of Lexington injected into the economy through our IDI regionally up and down the valley was a higher percentage than most of the other localities around us. And so the fact that the CARES Act committee had signaled that we would do a similar thing in the spring with 6 figures to help businesses that were struggling, that's my #1 goal, help businesses that are struggling. And so respectfully, just as long as we're all clear, this is not an economic development in the immediate timing. This is long-term, this way you're looking at it, and it's something nice to do for the citizens. And my goal is just to keep businesses open on Main Street and in the city of Lexington. And so that's just where my concerns are.
If I could just say, I mean, you mentioned, David, that you thought that, well, they'd have to just to use 5 of them for the business to get $100 or whatever. But if you give somebody a $20 voucher to go to a store, they're likely to spend more than that. So there's kind of a multiplier involved, and I think it is helpful for the businesses just to get the business in the door. And so if this were the only thing we were doing for local businesses, I totally see your point, David, but it's not the only thing that we have done and we're likely to do for local businesses. So I like the idea. I think it's a good idea.
Rebecca, how many businesses do you think then would be potentially this would apply to?
Well, based on the CARES money that we distributed, I would say there would be approximately 250 businesses that would participate. Now, it might be significantly lower only because of, it's a very different program, but potentially it could be a lot of businesses, and potentially this wouldn't be a huge amount of money if all businesses participate.
Right. And I like the idea of getting people into stores they haven't been in. My concern is, I know for me personally, it wouldn't change my spending habits. So if I was going to spend the money anyway, I'm not going to buy something different because I have it. And I think other people who don't normally shop downtown will just spend up to their $20. I do have a concern about fraud. When we send out 2,000 certificates, who's going to monitor that somebody hasn't copied them and is using multiple certificates? And the amount of manpower this is going to take. Is Main Street going to manage this whole program?
Yes, it is a lot of manpower. But we've done programs like this before, so we're willing to facilitate it if council approves. I would like to just comment on some of the comments from David. We're so grateful that the city cares so much about our businesses, and as a Main Street director that sits in on regular meetings with other Main Street directors in the state, you all are amazing, and we have a lot of executive directors across the state very jealous of Lexington. So thank you. I really do. We appreciate your support. This was just a program that, we've been kicking around. So we ran it through a strenuous exercise, and we don't have all the details worked out. I leave it in the hands of council if this is something that you feel you want to do. Honestly, if you had that CARES money on the 3rd round available today, I would say, oh yeah, let's do that. But this is something that would tide us over until we get into that next level of funding. Hopefully you will be able to help us with, provide that. That's wonderful news, and I appreciate it. But it's not a huge amount of money, but it's a program that we're offering, and it's really up to all of you to determine how much. It's a different focus. It's not super meaningful financially per business, but it has the potential of relationship building. And it's putting it through the getting it out to folks through the utility bills, I think saves a lot of time and effort, but we will have to figure out how to document what residents get what numbered certificate, and that probably should be worked out.
If I may really quickly, good evening, Mayor and council members. Just to address some of David's concerns, I believe he initially raised about CARES funding. So initially, when we first received our CARES funding, this idea kind of came up, just an early iteration of it, and was discussed. I know I had initially advised against it, and I believe we ran this by Jared as well, and he advised against it, just because of the language in the CARES Act stipulating that, that actual grant amounts to business needed to be tied to actual business losses, and as well as economic support to businesses, you know, could not be tied to revenue losses, excuse me, and had to be associated with actual losses incurred by the businesses. So this idea of a voucher program quickly kind of went away, and we started to focus more on what we could do for grants, utilizing the IDA and Main Street Lexington, and tying that application to actual losses by these businesses. We have since closed out our reporting for CARES funding. As you may recall, the last allocation that council made, the remainder that was left over was decided to put towards eligible payroll reimbursements for public safety and health employees. So CARES reporting and CARES compliance is closed out at this point. I've sent in the last compliance sheet to the state. And essentially this funding now is coming from a general fund appropriation, would come from a general fund appropriation. CARES restrictions would no longer apply. And, you know, I do think that this type of a program, as Dennis mentioned, does have a multiplier effect. If people are spending money in our community stores, you know, there is a potential to see that money come back in sales tax and meals tax. So I think this makes a lot of sense now that CARES restrictions are no longer applicable, and this funding is not coming from CARES dollars. So I just wanted to add that to clarify.
Thank you, Jake. Appreciate that that clarity, and add that appreciate Rebecca's response to David's questions. This really isn't an economic development. I almost look at it personally as a good neighbor gesture. The nights are long and the days are short right now, and our businesses are hurting. And this, to be able to encourage folks, the only reason I see to not think about doing this program is really given the state of the pandemic. But if we wash our hands, wear a mask, and keep our distance, we can do things safely. And I think that interaction will be great, because these vouchers don't know your street name. It'll go to all residents of the city of Lexington. So everyone's spending habits are different. My wife may wander down to the music shop and buy some guitar strings. I'm not sure how ours will get spent if we receive one. And this is approved by city council, but there's the opportunity for that interaction, and in the spirit of all of us being in this together, working through it. And I'm optimistic that we will see some additional CARES funding or some type of funding from the federal government, as we've seen in the past, because as was pointed out earlier, the revenues are down and the businesses are hurting. And to be able to have some money to distribute to those businesses that are doing well. There's some businesses that are flourishing. Yeah, I wish I could tell you the formula how to be successful in COVID, but I'll leave that to smarter minds. But keeping our hand on the stern to make sure that we progress positively. And we've this council has done a very, very substantially terrific job financially, so that we're not a stressed city.
Yes.
Being able to spend a few dollars to connect our residents with our merchants, I think will be a very positive outcome. Any other questions for Rebecca on this topic or this issue?
If a business received a voucher, and the voucher, of course, has a $20 denomination, and someone spent $17, would the customer get $3 change cash?
Oh, no, I think that they would have to make a purchase of $20, because then that gets so complicated.
That was my question. I'm glad that got covered.
Well, it says no cash value to the voucher, so you couldn't take it to one of the independent investment people to invest it. You couldn't get change back for it. You could buy something and not spend the whole thing, but you couldn't get change.
Sell it to your neighbor for $10. Just kidding.
Actually, that is something I am very concerned about too. I know we are one of the safest cities in Virginia, but I have concerns with fraud. I have concerns that it's a lot of work with very little bang. I mean, we're going to spend $42,000, and I don't think we're going to see much in return for that investment in the community. And I'm with David. If our businesses need another shot in the arm, I'd like to have it targeted to those businesses that need it most. And we can do a similar round of funding like we've done 2 rounds of. Before it was using CARES money, but now we have extra money in our own account that we can use for that type of thing. I do like the idea of doing some kind of economic development, but I don't think that giving away money, this is the way to do it. But that's me.
I agree. I'd love to stick to the original plan that we all had to be ready in the spring to evaluate the pandemic and come in with 6 figures to help businesses that are struggling, not have Main Street Lexington have to do potentially 2,210 redemptions of $20 vouchers. That would be an incredible amount of work. I can't imagine that. That would be incredible, especially if so I would love to save you all that. And if our goal is to bring people to downtown, one might even say we would potentially spend some of this money on a marketing campaign to tell other people how great Lexington is, because those are people that would be coming to Lexington also. So we've got our own citizens, and if we are truly just wanting to bring people to downtown, there's other ways to do that with Facebook ads and a marketing campaign. So $42,000 goes a long way to bring a lot of customers to downtown Lexington.
Rebecca, can I ask, I thought you said that you had the idea from the voucher from Blacksburg. Is that right? They have done something like this? Or
Yeah, but Blacksburg was not the good example.
Okay.
Blacksburg was a little too enthusiastic and a little too quick to, they announced their program in advance of launching it. And it was a 100% match. If somebody bought a $50 gift certificate, it was valued at $100. And that, for some reason, a lot of people found a lot of creative ways to use that. And they were buying hundreds of dollars of gift certificates. And by the time the program actually launched, it was sold out in a matter of minutes because people had reserved. That's what they'd done. They'd reserved it. So it wasn't, they had to come back for a second round and do a lot of fixing. So
can you think of a locality who's done something like this? I mean, do we have any template to work from in another locality?
Not off the top of my head. I know Roanoke is thinking about doing something, and again, it's small numbers, but I don't have any current information on how that's going.
Well, one thing that might make it more palatable to Leslie and David, I'm guessing, I don't know, you can let me know. What would it be like if we if we cut this in half and there were $10 gift certificates? Because that satisfies the need to get people in the stores. It's a reason to get into the store. So you kind of get the same bang for half the buck, I think. I mean, would that be workable? And if so, David and Leslie, would a lower figure, would half of the cost work for you guys?
Who wants to answer first? I'm happy to say that I don't think a lower amount would be, it's still the same amount of work.
Okay.
So I think a higher amount is better than lower. And I would actually say that if you wanted to change it up, make it a $30 voucher. I would not go under $20. And I say $30 because we have a number, a general number of residents in the city, but we also have a few apartment buildings where we're not 100% sure, because one bill goes to the owner and there's more apartments there. So, like if you wanted to spend more money, I don't think I would say, I don't think I would suggest for the amount of work that we would spend less.
Okay.
Have the business owners weighed in on the aspects of any of this?
Yes, they have. The general consensus was they were very happy that we weren't doing a, you know, a match or you know, you get a $20 voucher, but it's worth $30 because that got extremely confusing for some of the other cities that have done this. Or like I mentioned, Blacksburg, it was 100% match. That just got to be confusing. The majority of the businesses that we polled looked at it differently. It wasn't the amount of money. They anticipated that it had the potential to A, reach more citizens that may not be familiar with their store and get them in the door, and B, generally, most people, as Dennis pointed out earlier, you come into a store with a gift certificate and many times you end up spending more than the value of that certificate. So that was, the businesses were more on board for that aspect of the program than the actual amount of money. Is that helpful?
Mm. I can envision a lot of people not using these because so many don't have transportation. There will be no place good to park for wherever it is they want to possibly go. Could they give it away?
Yes, ma'am. And we actually intend to state that in the letter that would go out with the vouchers. And that would be, if this is not something meaningful to you, or if this is not something that you care to use, you are certainly welcome to, you know, gift it.
Okay.
Which that gets back to, there's really no way to prevent fraud if or, you know, people selling their gift certificate, because we may know who we send it out to, but if you're giving it away and then we find out there's 10 of one number, they're going to say, I don't know, I got this one. I know it's real, you know. I don't know how big of an issue that is, but I think when you have something like this, there's always going to be that potential.
I guess my number one goal is to continue to help businesses that need it. I know that you're looking at this differently. We're in a pandemic and I want to help businesses. I get that some of us are saying, well, it's a nice thing to do for our residents. Some of our residents might say, you put an expiration date on this and you want me to go out in a pandemic when I've been trying to be really safe and go out. So you're encouraging me. I don't know. It seems to work against itself in my mind. My continued desire is to keep our powder dry, to do what we said we would do, to put an enormous amount of money potentially into the local economy in the spring, like we said we would do, to businesses that would demonstrate their need for it. A $20, we've got a lot of art galleries, and $20 doesn't get you very far in a lot of our art galleries. They might miss out on this completely. Some of our amazing restaurants could miss out on this, but I don't know. I just don't know. I want to help the businesses that need it. And $42,000 is a lot of money. The city, we watch our pennies, and I'm focused on helping our businesses. That's it right now.
And I guess, you know, you're saying it's not CARES funding, but it kind of is, if we're just, you know, borrowing from one to pay the other. If the intent, and I'm hearing a lot, you know, maybe some different messaging between the questions and answers. But to David's point, as a former full-time, long-term downtown business owner, if I were examining this program and seeing the sort of, and it does become arbitrary distribution of city tax dollars into a downtown business, that I think is not the most effective way to apply this $40,000 as economic development. in my store, coming in with $10 or $20 is not going to get you a lot of mileage. And for a lot of the stores downtown, I'd say that's not too far off the mark. And if the idea is, well, they're going to spend more than that, I don't know how much money a lot of the households that these vouchers are going to have to spend. I can't anticipate, I would say, more than 50% of the vouchers actually being used. And yeah, that's speculation, it's shooting from the hip, but it's a number to work with. So in fact, you're only injecting $20,000 into the downtown economy, which, as you say, even with the 40,000 is not significant. So my preference would be to see the entire $40,000 used in a more effective and efficient way to help the businesses that really do need it. That as we get into February and March, I understand the sense of urgency, and I understand the timeliness of trying to get this money into play so it can be injected downtown, but I don't think it's really going to make that much difference. That's going to help make or break a business. And if that's the intent of the infusion, then I'd rather see it used 100% more effectively to ensure or help the business that are on the brink, to ensure their survival, and as they demonstrate their need for funding. As Frank said, some businesses are thriving. Why should they get some vouchers if they really don't need it? And that possibility is put into place in this proposal. I like the intent, I really do. I like the idea, but I think, as you say, there's some shortcomings. It hasn't been thought out quite to the fullest extent. And how long would that take? And by the time maybe it gets thought out, we're in a place where the idea of injecting more cash into the downtown businesses that need it, that time will have come. As for fraud, I'm really not too concerned about that. I'm, like everything, you probably have a little bit, but I don't think it'll be significant. But back to as a downtown business owner and taxpayer, as a business taxpayer, I would rather see this money used more effectively than what's been proposed. I don't like saying it, but
no offense. No offense taken.
I'm sorry, I have a real hard time supporting the idea as proposed. There are more effective ways to get people that haven't been downtown, like just the downtown holiday lotto program. Those things that are low cost but have a much greater return on the mission that you're trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do want to, you helped me remember that I misforgot. We wouldn't do this program past the January utility bill rollout, and that is the end of this month. I think Jim will help me clarify. I think it's like around the 22nd of January. So yeah, this is not going to be, it's either approved tonight and it gets done by and out by end of January, or we don't do it. So.
Yeah, I don't think, I'm interested in this idea, but it doesn't sound like we could come to that conclusion tonight. So that may be, but I am curious, Jake, you said that you were, in the initial round of CARES funding, you were unsure of this idea, but now you kind of come around to liking it. And is that because you see it as a potential sales tax generator for the city? I mean, what are the parts of this that you like?
Well, initially, I was advised against the idea just because it didn't fit with the guidance in the CARES Act language. I just thought the CARES Act was trying to set up a grant program and tie that to actual economic losses by business rather than a stimulus program where we're trying to get people, into the shops and spending money. And a large part of that was the restriction that the CARES funds could not offset government revenue losses. So we decided to stick with a grant type program. with CARES restrictions and guidance not being a part of this now, I do think the benefit of a program like this is that multiplier effect, that you have a win-win situation for business owners. You have individuals going into these businesses and spending money, and all likelihood, if you give them a $20 voucher, they may spend $30 or $40, and they just get, $20, 50% of that off. But that's putting money back into the businesses, and that also is coming back somewhat to the city in the form of sales and meals tax primarily.
Right.
So I think there are some pros and cons to both approach, whether you do a grant style or this type of a voucher style program. But the multiplier effect seemed to be an interesting idea to me now that CARES Act restrictions do not apply to this, and this is the city's own program.
And I do, thank you, Jake. That's such good points. I do also want to say, most of us are thinking retail, but we have many businesses in town. $20 can buy you lunch. You can get a haircut, I think, most of a haircut. Get shoes repaired. Can go towards, if the movie theater is open, I say this, I don't know if they've closed again because of the current spike, but you know what I'm saying? There's many places that money can get spent. It's not just, in a shop or, there's some service businesses that would benefit from this as well.
Well, I think something like this has a lot of merit. It's a great idea with some tweaking, but there was something that somebody said a while ago that really made my red flag go up, and it has to do with the current pandemic, that we're sending a couple of different messages here. One message we're sending is we're telling people that you need to continue to follow safety measures and stay in as much as possible, wearing your mask, not go out and mingle around all over the place. And even though that this is to kind of stimulate the business downtown, and it's also to get people who don't normally come downtown to go downtown to visit our merchants. But the message that we're sending is stay home, but then again, we're doing this to tell them to come out. And then you're going to have a lot of older people that are going to be the ones that really want to come out and use that, middle-aged or whatever. And those are the people who are the most at risk. I think if this were something post-pandemic, after everyone's had their vaccines and that kind of thing, it would be safer to do. And it's so unfortunate because the businesses downtown are hurting because of the pandemic, but we don't want our citizens to hurt because of something we're promoting.
This is Charles Alligood. I would like to support the idea of helping businesses that need the help and not to generally distribute, in effect, this money too widespread. I really did like the Main Street Lexington program to distribute the first 2 CARES distributions. I thought that distribution was perfect. And I would like to continue that style of distribution should we do it again. And I think it would I think the targeting would be more effective.
Thank you, Mr. Alligood. Well, you've heard the presentation and see the recommendation from the city manager. I don't know if anybody wants to make a motion. Of course, taking no action is taking action. But my sense is I don't want to discourage anyone from making a motion, but my sense is there's not support for moving forward with this program tonight. Not based on the efforts of staff, but just the conflict of COVID and new program of sorts. And I think, as Mr. Ziegler said, stay in the course to see how this winter goes and reevaluate things in the spring with dollars that we have to help targeted businesses to help them stay afloat through this through this time. Is there anyone who wants to make a motion? Hearing none, we will thank you, Rebecca, for joining us and for all of your good work at Main Street Lexington. The parade was terrific and all the other great things, too many to enumerate. Thank you for working on the project, even though council is not moving forward or taking action on it this evening. And
it's been my pleasure. Thank you all for your time. Have a good evening. And we'll just, we're here to work with each of you. So send us your ideas. We're always open for more ideas. Thank you. Thanks for your time. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The next item on the agenda is request for restoration of equipment and addition of capital items. Jim, did you want to speak to that, or Jake?
Yes, sir. I'm ready to speak to it. And as council knows, we did end the last year, fiscal year 20, with some significant amount of funds that were available as carryover, and they were put into the general fund as unallocated funds. Council has taken a very prudent policy of saying, let's wait until the spring or late winter, perhaps, to consider major items of purchase. However, we have a number of items today that several departments have been made known to me that really need to be looked at. These items are very small when it comes to equipment purchases. The police department would like to see $16,000 or a bit more spent on a speed trailer where they can monitor the speeds throughout the community. We've had a piece of equipment of this nature in the past, and prior to the fiscal year starting, it was no longer working. And it doesn't allow the police department to put that piece of equipment out on the streets in the neighborhoods and record for an extended period of time what kind of speeding goes on there, what the speeds are. So it's pretty important to our community and to the police department that we have that piece of equipment and put it in service again. Public Works, in a like fashion, has been doing without a mini excavator. Well, that's about an $88,000 purchase. Half of that, however, would come from the utility fund and the equipment replacement funds that are currently there in the utility fund for these types of purposes. So only $44,000 would come from the general fund to buy this piece of equipment. The next item is a website, and this was not originally in the city budget, but as the school year started and the school started looking at how they would get information out to the parents and the students about the changes in the educational programming and teaching our students, it became clear, talking to Rebecca Walders, our superintendent, Nathan Straub, who's our IT guy, that we were missing some tools in that respect that would be very helpful to our schools. And then I took up the discussion with Janie Hostetter, who of course puts the items on the website here. And she indicated there's a lot of new technology out there that would make the work she does easier and also provide additional information or formats of information that would be beneficial to the public. So I really would like to see council consider this expense because it's a rather insignificant amount of dollars in total. And we do have approximately, if I can find that number, $836,536,000 in carryover. And the total of this money out of the general fund is $77,500. So we would still have a very large amount set aside available to look at in the spring as to what may happen with COVID and what are the uses might at that time present themselves to us. And so it's a very minimum amount of money. And I do have the department heads from all those departments here to answer any questions you might have. If you have questions about how these pieces of equipment could help us and how they are needed today. So I, again, would recommend that council does move forward and make these expenditures. We would take it out of those unallocated general funds, make a budget amendment as required, but we would start purchasing these pieces of equipment as soon as possible.
Thank you, Jim. Do members of council have any questions, or would you like to consider this recommendation?
Jim, thanks for the presentation and thanks to Lieutenant Frost for being here, but I completely endorse and I'll make a motion. I mean, you don't need to win me over on needing the speed monitoring trailer. It has a great impact throughout town, wherever it's placed. It gives us was that on the website? Where was that on the website? And so that's great for the schools. They've said this for a few months that they need a new website. And I'll make a motion to approve the expenditures to purchase a speed monitoring trailer, mini excavator, and a website update.
I'll second.
Excellent. We have a motion by Mr. Ziegler, second by Ms. Alexander. Any further discussion?
I have a
I'd like to
question.
hear what David had to say about the trailer because he dropped out on my end. I was just curious what his comments were.
My comments were that I think is a great expenditure because I feel like that it does have a great impact wherever it is placed throughout the city and gives us really good data when it registers the speed of each car that goes by over a period of time. Over the years, I know that we've gotten good data from that when people have complained about a certain part of the city, that monitoring trailer gives us some data. And so, you know, at some point our kids are going to be back in school and walk into our schools, and that trailer comes in really, really handy to help people slow down around our schools.
I agree with the excavator. I'm with the speed trailer. I have a question about the excavator. Is this a new piece of equipment or is it replacing a piece of equipment?
It is a piece of equipment that would be replaced. We've had one currently, and that's no longer in service or very serviceable. I know Jeff Martone is here. Jeff, if you'd like to comment further.
I would say that the mini excavator would be a new piece of equipment. We currently dig. We have 5 digging crews, predominantly 3 that would use digging equipment most often. We currently excavate with 2 backhoes. If you look at the progression of the free market, you know, Enterprise went from backhoes to excavators many years ago. Excavators are far superior in performance. If you look at any contractor that's come to work for the city or VMI or WL and they're doing heavy utility replacement, you will hardly ever see them come to town with a backhoe. They're going to be digging with an excavator. I don't mean to correct Jim. We do have an excavator. It's been in our inventory. I think it's a 2003 Liebherr 804A or 904A or something. It is a large excavator. It is rubber tired. It has downriggers for stabilization. It is impractical for getting in people's backyards. As many know, we have a preference for getting into when we're working on sewer lines. So a mini excavator would be far superior for those situations. I think, and I don't have the exact numbers in front of me tonight, I think that our equipment requests prior to being cut due to the pandemic for the general fund was like $280,000, and we whittled it down to whatever number it was. Of all the equipment that was scrubbed this past year, if you go look, and I don't have the exact number, but I know that of all the pieces that we have gone and rented, that the mini excavator is by and far the number one that we've gone out and rented out of need versus all the ones we had proposed and got cut. We have not had to go out and rent. Could we get by without it another year? Yes, but you know, we're looking at going into I&I work and everything else. And again, we're working in people's backyards, front yards, side yards, and dragging, you know, a 50 million ton piece of equipment on rubber tires or stabilizers do that work is not the best way to do it. Dragging a backhoe in there could do it. Is it the fastest way to do it? No. So I would say that it's money well spent.
I would support the purchase of a mini excavator as a new piece of equipment. I can see and have experience with it. They have great utility, and it's currently the tools that Lexington Public Works has don't have the utility that mini excavator would have. I can just see many more jobs being able to happen because of having that.
Yeah, thank you for the report on that. And it's a significant piece of equipment. I believe we have a motion and a second. Is there any other further discussion? Hearing none, I'd ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Alligood?
Aye.
Mr. Ayers?
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler?
Aye.
Ms. Strawn?
Aye.
Alexander?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you for bringing that forward. And Jeff, thanks for being with us, and glad we can put that equipment back in inventory and help our staff be more efficient and effective. Next item on the agenda is the Paddler's Tax Resolution that have been sent out previously. Jim, if you'd like to speak to that, please, briefly.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was something that did arise very unexpectedly, just after or just before the first of the year, I should say. Gene Clark in tourism, Spencer Sutter with the county, and others in local government found this in our doorstep. We weren't aware of it. It didn't get a very high exposure when the General Assembly discussed this matter, or the Department of Wildlife and Resources proposed this matter. And it is contrary to the types of things we're trying to do with our outdoor resources here in the city and in our region. So it's just not a positive thing. And my understanding is the county administrator is going to bring this to his board. Other counties and localities in our region have already done so. And I just felt it was useful to present it to City Council, make you aware, and also ask you to send this resolution to our delegation as well, opposing the tax.
Thank you, Jim. Members of council have any questions?
Jim, we don't have any Department of, I don't have the paper in front of me, but Department of Games and Fisheries launches in Lexington though, right? I mean, George Point's our only one, and that is, we own that.
That is correct. We do not. There was some question as to how this might broadly apply if that Department of Wildlife and Resources funding was used on city or county owned facilities. They still might insist that the tax would be applicable. And I have not seen a specific indication of whether that's true or not. So it covers the basis for us.
So Jim, this resolution, has it been provided to other localities to sign on to? Is that what we're doing? I'm just trying to figure out where.
Yes, this came from Botetourt County. And again, the county administrator and I both looked at this as a framework to provide to our elected bodies to say, here's what we'd like to propose with our fellow counties and localities.
And also add for council's consideration, I would join the city manager in recommending that city council adopt this. It's a means to lobby the legislature. I think there may have been some good intent with this effort and this legislation that was passed in the last assembly, but it really is counterproductive to the Rockbridge Area Outdoor Partnership and various things. It's also very difficult. Small businesses that have been featured as being successful prior to COVID, like the James River livery of sorts. I can't remember the exact name of the company, but it's not incumbent upon them to sell license. It's incumbent upon individuals to get these. So if you took your boat and went down to Glasgow and went to enter, you would need to have a permit, you and anyone that fits the criteria, and certainly getting people to enjoy the outdoors and the rivers is certainly our intent in inviting people to the area and making use of the outdoor opportunities. So I would encourage council, and the point I wanted to make is that VML opposes this. It somewhat got through without their awareness prior, but the staff at VML is actively working to lobby the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries and Natural Resources to modify or liberate this so that the permit's not required.
Who's good? I mean, is Glasgow the only one in our region that this applies to, the only launch that this applies to? And is Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, they're responsible for maintaining it?
I can't answer that question, frankly. I don't know. It's just a matter of somewhat the impression that is provided to our outdoors folks and as the mayor mentioned, the liveries are the suppliers of the boats and kayaks that would be on the river. It creates an additional hurdle to them and to the citizens who want to use the rivers. How do I, as an individual, know that I go to a site and somebody's not going to show up and say, you have to buy a permit or a license, or they give you a ticket when you show up? We would not want that impression to be made, or that barrier to be put in place for any of our users.
What the bill was? I'm sorry, what was the bill? Because I'm reading articles about it, and all of these delegates, like Delegate Austin from Botetourt County said, yeah, we missed this one. It got passed and no one paid any attention to it. I'm kind of like, well, if the delegates missed it, they should work to fix it, and they don't need our help. But do we know what the bill is?
I have seen that. Obviously, it's not in the briefing. My understanding was it was basically a general revenue type bill for Department of Wildlife and Resources to try and fund their agency and their goals through producing more revenues.
Okay, so that's how it got by. Maybe not a standalone bill, because it's a $4 fee. If you're going to be a one-day person on the water using a boat access point to follow the law, you go onto an app on your phone, you do it, $4, they get your money, and that's, yeah, okay.
Is the fee applied if you have a current hunting or fishing license? I don't know the language of the bill.
It does not. If you have it here in the third whereas, it notes that if you have a hunting, trapping, or fishing permit, Restore the Wildlife membership, an access permit, or current certificate of boat registration. So again, it makes it very difficult for the user to understand if they qualify or if they don't,
Thanks for that clarification. I don't know, I somehow skipped over that. I think anything we can do to remove the obstacles of recreation, even broader than Rockbridge County, I think it's a good idea. Because those folks come up to Lexington, and our folks go down to Glasgow, and throwing curveballs as you're trying to get your canoe in the water really isn't a really welcoming thing to do.
So do you need a motion to approve the resolution as presented?
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution as presented.
I'll second that.
Thank you, David. Do it the first, and Chuck with the second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Mr. Smith?
Emphatic aye.
Ms. Strawn?
Nay.
Mr. Sigler?
Aye.
Mr. Alligood?
Aye.
Mr. Ayers?
Aye.
Ms. Alexander?
Aye.
Skip Ravenhorse will be delighted to know that it was a 5-1 vote and not unanimous. He had opined on that in a prior meeting, for those not aware. Thank you for your consideration and support of that issue. I think even our business Journey Outdoors, I believe it's called, off Walker Street, will appreciate our support of eliminating that, lobbying to have that changed. We don't technically have another item added to the agenda, but in our work session, there was discussion about directing staff for a potential change in our time of meeting. I didn't want that to be missed if that's something that council would like to take up.
Sure, I will make the motion that would to direct the staff to put together an ordinance changing the time of our meeting, our regular meeting, to 7 p.m.
I second that.
Have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, a roll call vote. Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Alligood?
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler?
Aye.
Ms. Strong?
Aye.
Mr. Ayers?
Aye.
Ms. Alexander?
Aye. We can end the discussion.
we've only just begun.
Ugh.
Staff will embark on whatever's necessary to have council consider a time change. Greatly appreciated. I'm not aware of any other business coming before council, but we do have a closed session. Before Ms. Alexander reads us into closed session, I want to thank everyone for joining us and for their commitment and passion to our city. We do not plan on taking any action once we come out of our closed meeting other than adjournment of our meeting and certification certainly of the closed meeting. Ms. Alexander, if you'll please read us in.
I move that Lexington City Council will convene in a closed meeting in accordance with section 2.2-3711, subsection A, paragraph 3 of the Code of Virginia, a closed session for the purpose of discussing the disposition of real estate for a public purpose, excuse me. I've made the motion. I'm seeking a second.
Second.
It's been moved and second that we go into closed session, but we'll need to do a roll call vote. Ms. Strawn,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Sigler,
Aye.
Mr. Alligood,
Aye.
Mr. Ayers,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Motion carries. We are now into closed